Rain combed the Mission District into shining threads. The iron gate of St. Bridget's shelter moaned when Sister Agnes pushed it open. On the curb, two cars idled like animals that did not know each other. A black Lincoln with plates that said old money. A red Porsche that wanted the whole block to look. I had stood on this stoop once before. In another life, the Hales had lifted me out with gentle hands, dressed me in soft things, and told me I would never have to bruise. I had grown old as Evan Hale's wife, then died with his name on my pillow. It was supposed to be sweet. It was not. This time, Evan stepped in front of his parents and pointed past me. "Don't take her. I'm choosing Lila." The girl beside me smelled like gardenia. Lila Hart. A silver key pendant rested at the base of her throat. She curled her fingers over it when Evan spoke as if the metal might fly away. Mrs. Hale's smile was practiced. Mr. Hale's hand tightened on his umbrella. People always looked expensive when they were trying not to argue in the rain. "I'm right here," I said, which was true and also not enough. Evan stared at me like I was a stain on a white shirt. "Even if you beg Emery, we won't take you with us." His eyes flicked to the nuns behind me. "She's better off where people eat their own. Lila is coming with us." Lila's lashes trembled. She gave me a look I could not read. Pity, maybe. Triumph, maybe. Her thumb pressed the key until the skin paled. Headlights washed the wall. A second car slid up to the gate. The back window lowered a hand's width. A woman's gaze clear and cool met mine. "Name," she said. "Emery," I said. "From now, Emery Whitmore." Veronica Whitmore did not step into the rain. She did not offer a coat. It felt less like being chosen and more like being audited. I nodded anyway. Sister Agnes touched my elbow. "Go," she whispered. The Lincolns inside smelled like cedar and citrus. I watched the red Porsche in the mirror. Evan leaned down and sealed Lila into the passenger seat with a wet palm on the roof. He did not look away from me until his car pulled into traffic. The taillights smeared the street red. "Seatbelt," Veronica said. The Whitmore house on Pacific Heights looked like it had been carved from milk. Marble floors took the hush from your shoes. Oil paintings watched with old eyes. Someone had polished the banister until it held the faces of whoever leaned over it. At the top of the stairs, a boy lounged with one shoulder to the rail. For a flash, I thought the house had invented him to match its symmetry. Fine bones, dark hair that disobeyed combs. He didn't speak. His attention touched my face and slid away, not hostile, not kind. Glass that had learned not to reflect. "Jace," Veronica said without turning. "This is your sister, Emery." He did not answer. He did not leave. He watched us like a lighthouse that had no light. Veronica placed her handbag on a console and looked at the clock. Up at 5, writing at 6, archery at 8, debate calculus corporate fundamentals after lunch, self-defense at 6. You will sleep when you earn it. Her eyes took my measure and then the hallways. "Whitmores are not raised. We are forged." "Yes, ma'am," I said. Mrs. Chan, the house manager, arrived with a towel and a soft cluck. "Shoes there. We do not track the city inside." She looked at my wet hair with an ache in her face and a towel already in her hands. "Luis will have the car ready for school," Veronica said. "Your room is at the end of the west hall. Do not open the study. It is locked." I caught the briefest glance she sent toward an old door with a brass keyhole big enough to swallow a child's curiosity. My room had a window that cut the bay into gray plates. On the dresser, someone had set a glass of water and a small ceramic dish shaped like a leaf. The house held itself upright without creaking. I placed my socks on the radiator and watched steam coil. The next morning, the smell of leather bit my throat. Marin's hills were still a little blue from morning. My thighs shook by the second lap. The horse flicked an ear when I gritted my teeth and sat deeper. When we switched to Presidio later, the bowstring raised a kiss of burn on my fingers. The instructor corrected my elbow with 2 clicks of his tongue. Mrs. Chan pressed a packet of ice into my palm when I got back. "You can tell Madam you need rest," she said. "No," I said, which surprised us both with how easy it came. "I want to learn." At dinner, the long table made sound travel strangely. Veronica spoke in short sentences to 2 aunts and an uncle, who smiled with their teeth only. Jace took his place without scraping his chair. When I said good evening, he inclined his head and returned his focus to the corner of his plate. The room's air had weight but not warmth. In the morning, Luis kept the Lincoln purring at the curb. I came out late breath-fogging. Jace stood by the rear door with his bag. He did not look impatient. He opened the door and stepped in first. I said, "Morning, Jace." He pulled his long legs in and set a stainless bottle between us. Honey and ginger floated up and caught in my nose. "You can have it," I said. He nudged it an inch toward me. No words. His reflection in the glass moved when the car did. Peninsula International smelled like bleach and paper. The hallways were wide enough to fit egos side by side. Kids stared at Jace like he had grown antlers. Mute, someone mouthed. I walked beside him until the chemistry lab swallowed me, and a math teacher with a bun and sharp eyes set a stack of problems like bricks. By Saturday, my legs were a paint chart of purples. Sugar, the Whitmore's cat, shot across the back terrace as if she had been released from a slingshot. I scooped her up before she dove into the rosemary and felt her heart flutter fast against my forearm. "Sugar, you always pick the wrong people," a girl sang on the other side of the fence. Lace rustled like leaves. Lila stepped into view, smile painted in pastel. Evan trailed behind with his hands in his pockets, and a look he used for store clerks and the help. His smile was easy until it found me. Then it tightened. "You again," he said, like a ghost that refuses to stay buried. "Sugar likes everyone," I said into the cat's ear. Lila's gaze slipped to my riding boots, then to the welt peeking under my sleeve. "They work you here, huh?" she said, voice bright enough to sell something. "Archery, too," I heard. "Whitmore's are terrifying." "Do not say things you do not understand," I said. It came out calm. It surprised me. Evan's mouth tilted. "Even if you Neil Emery, I wouldn't take you. We don't welcome thieves." He stepped closer to Lila like she was the safe place at the end of a game. Lila reached for Sugar with careful hands. Her necklace tipped forward. The key flashed. Small old, the kind that opened something made when people wrote letters by hand. Her fingers covered it in one practiced motion. "Is that car waiting for you?" she asked, eyes darting past my shoulder to the driveway where Luis had parked under the jacaranda. The Lincoln's roof held purple petals like confetti. "It is," I said. "Emery Whitmore." She tried the name, something pinched behind her smile. I let Sugar settle into her arms. "She likes soft things," I said. "Then she won't like you," Evan said. His tone had a laugh baked into it. A window on the second floor whispered. I glanced up and caught a shape in the railing's shadow. Jace. His hand rested on the polished wood. His gaze was not blank this time. It was steady. It slid past Evan's face and settled on the bloodline welts at my wrist. Then it moved to the stainless bottle on the patio table below, still beating with condensation. He held my eyes for a breath, then turned away. The curtain fell back into place. Lila's fingers toyed with the key. "I have to go," she said. "We have plans." Her voice tripped, then righted itself. She looked like she wanted to ask me something and decided to save it for a private room with fewer trees. Evan guided her by the elbow like a gentleman from old movies. The red Porsche made the kind of noise that wants to be heard. He drove away with the window down. He did not look back. The afternoon slid toward evening. The tiles gave their heat back to the air. Luis honked once to say time. I picked up the stainless bottle and held it to my bruised thigh. The cold climbed my skin and made me wince. When I turned toward the house, the garage door lifted. The Porsche had looped the block as if to say one more thing. Tail lights flexed red as a fresh cut and washed over the fence. For a second, the light struck Lila's pendant where it hung, and the little key burned as if it had its own match inside it. Then the car was gone, and the pendant went back to being a small, quiet piece of metal against a girl's throat. I watched the empty street until the rain started again, and the smell of wet stone rose from the steps. By Sunday, the rain had rinsed the city clean. The bay looked hammered flat. I woke before the alarm and lay still listening to the house breathe. Down the hall, a door clicked. The scent of ginger and honey drifted like a thin ribbon. At breakfast, Veronica glanced at my hands, then at the schedule Mrs. Chan had magneted to the sub-zero. Her tone did not change. "You are late to nothing. If you are early, you study." The aunts murmured their approval as if the coffee needed more sugar. Jace ate in silence with a posture that looked learned in rooms that required it. When I said good morning, his eyes lifted, caught, and dropped. The smallest nod, the smallest concession. Luis idled at the curb. The air outside had that early cool that pretends it will last. I jogged the steps and reached for the door. Jace was there, already holding it. He slid in, first long legs folding in one smooth motion. The stainless bottle waited on the armrest. I lifted it and felt the warmth at my palm. "You can keep it," I said. His lashes flickered. The car eased away. Peninsula International was a grid of glass and white beams that liked to glitter at the sky. The smell of bleach and pencil shavings made a clean kind of headache. We moved through the lobby, shoulder to shoulder, not touching. I could feel the eyes like insects landing and flying again. "Mute," someone mouthed near the lockers. "Genius," someone else answered under his breath, almost admiring, almost afraid. By lunch, my head was a packed shelf. After biolab, I took the long way to the library so I could walk off the hum in my skull. The path cut behind a row of food trucks into the alley where the dumpsters sat. The heat there was different. Old oil-wet cardboard, a hint of something sour. A group of boys with shaved necks and too much summer left in their eyes blocked the bend. The one with the buzz cut had a grin that looked freshly carved. Someone had called him near the gym. He had that look of kids who learned early that no one would stop their hand once it started. His attention shifted. It followed a figure standing too still spine to the painted brick. Jace. Look who wandered off, Trent said. His voice had laughter bent into it. The rich statue. You hit him, he does not even make a sound. I felt my breath change. It went small and hot. My fingers found the taped handle of an aluminum bat leaning on a crate. The grip had been chewed at by someone's teeth. I stepped out before I could decide to do anything else. I called the cops, I said. My voice carried. They are on their way. The lie did what lies are built to do. It opened a pocket of indecision. One boy took a step back. Two looked up the alley. In that thin space, I swung. I went for fists and ribs, not heads. The bat rang against bone and concrete. They scattered and came back and scattered again. Little liar, Trent said. His grin broke open. He kicked me between the shoulder blades. I went forward, caught myself on my palms, and bit my lip, so I did not give him a sound to feed on. Copper filled my mouth. Run, I said to Jace without looking. He did not move. He had pressed his entire life into being still. I put my back to him and made myself bigger than I was. Another kick, and the world turned grainy. Sound thinned to a whistle that sat in my right ear and would not stop. I smiled at the brick until it steadied, then turned and bared my teeth in a way that was not a smile. Do not touch him. The next swing came in low. Jace moved for the first time. He lunged and clamped his teeth on the attacker's forearm. The boy screamed high and shocked, more offended than hurt. The others piled on Jace and beat him small. The bat knocked from my hand and clattered into a puddle rimmed with gasoline. I went for the nearest ankle and held like I was at the edge of some long drop. Someone stomped my wrist and stars blew out behind my eyes. A pair of white sneakers stopped at the mouth of the alley. For a second I thought the sound in my ear had shifted into footsteps. A girl's voice floated around the corner, bright with appetite. Evan, the strawberry cake place is this way. He did not answer. The sneakers turned. He stood against the light and would not enter the shadow. His head tilted the way people do when they have found a thing they did not want. Do not look, he told Lila. He covered her eyes with his palm like a showman before a reveal. It is filthy. She twisted under his hand to peek. Oh my God, someone is hurt. She pressed closer to him. She did not lift her hand. Trent laughed at them without turning his head. Mind your cake, Prince. I lowered my face to the asphalt and breathed through the stink. Do not be afraid, I told Jace. Small so only he could hear it. This time when the footsteps came, they were fast and wrong. Luis's voice cut around the bend. He shouted my name. Another set of feet answered in a blocky rhythm that meant uniforms. The boys scattered with the practiced panic of people who knew every exit. Trent swore at nobody and slapped the brick with an open palm on his way out. The bat lay where the puddle had thinned. I had wanted to move it. I lifted my hand and made it halfway before my shoulder changed its mind. The hospital had the same antiseptic hum as the school, but without the bells. My world shrank to a white curtain and the small square of sky that a high window allowed. I let the quiet wash through and take some hurt with it. I woke to hair in my field of vision. A head had slid down to sleep at the edge of my bed. Dark, stubborn hair that refused to lie flat even under hospital light. Jace. My movement startled him, and he raised his face. His eyes were dark enough to make a person think of deep water. He looked at the bandage above my eyebrow. His fingers lifted, paused, and touched the edge with a care that made my throat pull tight. Does it hurt? He said. It came out rough and warm. He cleared his throat as if the word itself had been sitting there for a year and needed to be coaxed. Little sister. The curtain opened. Veronica stopped as if a rule had changed without telling her. She stood very straight and did nothing with her hands. The air between her and the bed had new weight. Say something to me, Jace, she said. It was almost a plea and almost a command. He looked at her and then back at me, his mouth closed. He was not ready to move the word any farther. Mrs. Chan appeared with takeout containers that smelled like rice and chicken and a lemony sauce. She told us more than the nurse had. The police had questioned one boy from the school and 3 from outside. Charges for the older ones, expulsion for the student. I ate because Jace kept tilting the carton at me and tapping a chopstick against the rim like a metronome. When I dropped a piece of chicken into his bowl, he startled, then pretended to take it for granted. A nurse bustled in to scold him for escaping his own room. He smiled without showing his teeth and set his palm on my hair, the way someone calms a frightened animal. Get well soon, he said. The second sentence landed easier than the first. He let the nurse herd him away. Veronica watched him go with eyes that shone and did not fall. When the door closed, she sat and folded her skirt under her knees like a dancer at the end of class. She did not look at me while she spoke. He was not always like this, she said, steady, composed, a child that made other children look loud. She lifted her hand and put it back in her lap. 4 years ago, my husband had been dead 1 year. The group was a carcass on the highway and the trucks kept coming. Sarah was 6, my niece, my daughter. Someone decided we were soft at the edges. She did not give me the scene. She gave me a series of objects as if she could not say the movement yet. A warehouse with no windows. The sound of a steel rod hitting concrete. A girl's hair ribbon on the floor. Jace standing so still he might break the air. After that, he did not speak. Not to doctors or to the piano teacher who tried to coax sound out of him by teaching him to hit keys harder. She stopped. She breathed in the kind of breath you take when you have held something down for too long. I am not sentimental, Veronica said, but I am not ungrateful. She turned to me, and for the first time since the gate at the shelter, I felt heat under the cool. You protect my son, I will give you everything you can lift. The nurse returned and shooed her with amiable cruelty. Rules, madam, visiting hours. Veronica rose and looked at the bandage on my forehead like it was an orphaned child sitting on a step. Rest, she said. She left the curtain open a hand's width. The room felt less like a box and more like a doorway. A week later, I climbed the front steps of the Whitmore house with slow care. The staff had rearranged their faces. Not pity, not exactly. More like the first time someone learns a name and decides to use it correctly. The schedule on the fridge had more ink. Corporate fundamentals gained a second line. Debate became 2 evenings. You will enter Whitmore one day, Veronica said. If you cannot do the work will not respect you. The same relatives who had counted courses on their fingers last month stopped in mid-sentence when I entered rooms. I did not collect their looks. Jace did not seem to care that they adjusted themselves either. He had begun to train with a quiet man who wore soft-soled shoes and never raised his voice. Sometimes I watched from the threshold while they moved through a sequence. Elbow, pivot, balance on the outside edge of the foot. When the coach corrected him, he nodded once and did it again until the line looked clean. At dinner, Jace reached for the tea before my hand did and set it by my plate. Eat, he said. The word was starting to fit his mouth. I did. School folded back over me like a sheet pulled tight. People had not forgotten the alley, though most pretended to. One teacher took a beat too long before calling on me. Kids at the vending machines fell silent when I passed, and then snapped the wire of their conversation as if it would spark. I pretended not to notice and let the day be a rhythm that could carry what it had to. On the community board near the cafeteria, someone had stapled a poster for the Laguna Seca weekend. Checkered flags in a neat grid. The corkscrew turn stylized in white on a black field, a braid of asphalt in mid-twist. 2 boys argued under it about breakpoints the way people argue about gods. I walked by and the corner of the paper lifted in the conditioned air. That night Mrs. Chan had the news on low in the family room. The anchor's voice rode over video of cars that looked like weapons. Phantom returned last season for a 3-race sweep, the woman said. Unmatched control through the corkscrew turn. The camera cut to a slow motion angle. The black car dipped behind the crest, then surfaced on the other side already straight. It looked like water changing shape. I found Jace in the doorway, half in shadow, a towel around his neck from training. His eyes rested on the screen without hunger. He watched the movement like a craftsman watching a familiar cut of wood under a plane. The anchor said the name again, and the room held it like a secret repeated once too often. Phantom. Jace's gaze flicked to the tea on the table, then to the old brass keyhole of the study down the hall, then back to the screen. He did not say a word. He did not have to. The house breathed in and held it. The weekend came bright and windy. Fog pulled back from the hills like a curtain. On the community board, the Laguna Seca poster had new thumbtacks, as if the paper needed more to hold it to the day. Mrs. Chan folded a scarf and handed it to me on the way out. Sun looks kind, she said. It bites. Louise took Highway 1 until the water opened beside us. Jace sat with his headphones around his neck and his eyes on the line where ocean met light. He had not asked where we were going. I had said track, and he had nodded like the word had a clean edge he liked. Laguna Seca rose from the sand as a lattice of concrete and scaffolding. Food smoke and hot breaks salted the air. Engines barked and settled, then rose again. The crowd moved like a living organism. Checkered flags snapped on poles. A section of the stands wore Hail Blue. A banner read Go Evan with a paint drip down the G. He stood near the pit wall with a helmet under his arm. He'd put on 10 pounds of confidence since the alley. Lila tucked herself into the crook of his arm with a dress that did not belong near the smell of tires. The silver key at her throat winked in the sun, bright and careless. When Evan saw me, his posture changed. He let the helmet drop to his side and unhooked Lila's hand without looking at her face. I felt Veronica's training in my bones. I let my shoulders be level and my breath slow. He came over 2 at a time through the bleacher steps and stopped a row below. "Didn't expect to see you," he said. He meant something else. The words tasted like metal. "I wanted to watch a good line through the corkscrew," I said. He smiled with his teeth. "Then watch mine." He turned his head and found Jace with the accuracy of a hawk. "Care for a race, Whitmore?" People close enough to hear made the small sound crowds make before contact. Lila reached the rail and put both palms on it. Her painted nails flashed. Jace's eyes went from Evan's face to my face. "Want me to win?" he asked. It was almost nothing, a question with the shape of a hand. I let my chin dip once. He did not answer out loud. He turned and walked toward the pits like the ground had remembered his weight. The red car that Evan favored threw sound at the stands when he fired it. The black car that sat 2 bays down did not try to be loud. It hummed and waited. The starter lifted an arm and dropped it. The cars leaped. Evan took turn 2 like he wanted to pull the track into himself. He liked a big break and a bigger brag. People roared when he opened a gap on the back straight. You could feel his pleasure sit down beside you and try to take the rest of the bench. The corkscrew came into view, a mouth in the hill. 4 stories of drop and a left-right switch that punished ego and rewarded faith. Jay slid to the outside and stayed there longer than he should have. For a heartbeat, he disappeared behind the crest. The black car fell, and then rose already pointed where it needed to be. It looked like the asphalt had bent to let him through. No one cheered. The sound went out of the stands like air finding a crack. Then it came back, not as cheers, but as whispers threaded into each other. That pass, like last season, phantom. The word moved from row to row until it had a body. It reached Lila and hit her straight. Her mouth opened a little as if the syllables had come with a taste. Evan missed an apex and had to correct. The black car did not need to correct. It widened the space that had opened and kept widening it until the checkered flag fell. Jace brought the car in smooth and flat. He stepped out and set the helmet on the roof. The world made room where he walked without him asking. He reached me, held out his hand, and waited for me to take it. I did. "Let's go home," he said. Around us the talk kept building its own weather. Lila stood with her fingers curled against the rail and her key pressed hard enough to leave a mark. Evan stared past me at the hill as if the track had changed shape while he blinked. He did not look at Jace. He looked at whatever he thought the wind had taken from him. We left before the next heat. The road back ran between yellow grass and low clouds. In the car, Jace took the stainless bottle from his bag, unscrewed the lid and tilted it toward me. Honey and ginger curled up from it. The skin above his knuckles was red where someone's teeth had broken weeks ago. He set the bottle between us and let it ride there. The week swallowed me. Exams filled the days with multiple choice and silence. Veronica's hand on the banister slowed the house, but not for me. In the study, she had unlocked spreadsheets sat under paperweights that looked like small stones. She let me stand at the threshold and look, which was more than most doors let a person do. The results landed on a Thursday morning like another sheet of weather. Counselor's office, printouts, the board outside the main hall. My name at the top with a row of numbers like a clean horizon. People clotted around the glass and read out loud in voices that did not belong to them. I did not feel a rip of joy. I felt the same breath I had taken at the rail after the corkscrew, only longer. When I stepped back, someone whistled under his teeth. Another kid said something crude and then tried to turn it into a compliment. I moved past and let the hallway widen for me. That night, kitchen lights over steel. Mrs. Chan cut an orange and pushed the bowl near my elbow. Veronica stood by the window with the phone at her ear. Her tone stayed smooth while her knuckles went pale on the sill. "You will look out the window," she said when she hung up. "For 3 days, Maui. Then you will come back and pass the next test without noise." I blinked. 3 days. "Short trips are honest," she said. "Long ones lie." Jace leaned in the doorway, hair damp from a shower, and nodded like someone had set a law he could follow. We met the morning with soft luggage and black sunglasses. SFO was a chorus of wheels and announcements. At the end of the line, to security, a familiar shape sat up out of the crowd. The Hales. Mr. Hale had a jaw like a shirt collar, too tight. Mrs. Hale had a smile that had been ironed flat. Evan's hands were in his pockets. Lila walked too close to him as if distance would make him disappear. The key at her throat rocked when she breathed. They saw us. The recognition ran across their faces like light across water. The adults nodded at Veronica and received a nod back with the precise degree of warmth she kept for old neighbors. Evan left his parents and came toward me with a look that did not have enough words to fill it. He stopped an arm's length away. "Congratulations," he said. He gave the word the weight of something he had to admit. "Thank you," I said. I glanced at Jace. He had drifted half a step closer, so our sleeves touched. Evan took a breath as if the next sentence could change a past. Before he could spend it, Lila's hand clamped his forearm. The key caught a strip of sunlight and threw it onto my wrist. Her eyes had a shine that made me think of polished glass and fractures underneath. "She does not want to talk to you," she said. She put her body between us and tilted her chin high. "Let go," Evan said. He shook his arm sharply. Lila lost her balance and put a hand on the carpet to catch herself. For a second, the whole terminal looked at them. Some faces enjoyed it. Some winced. Lila laughed without humor. "You changed?" she said. "You picked me first, remember?" The words landed and stayed between them like a small piece of furniture no one could carry. He stared at me over the top of it and then at the floor. I stepped back. Veronica called my name once and motioned with 2 fingers. Jace picked up both carry-ons, so my hands were empty. We moved toward the gate with the even pace of people who have not stolen anything. At the window, the planes lined up like teeth, Maui the board said. I watched a luggage cart move under a belly of silver and felt the expensive air on my face. My phone vibrated. A market alert rolled onto the screen and sat there. "Hail Capital added to liquidity watch list," it said. I did not touch it. On the other side of the glass, a ground crewman raised 2 bright paddles and turned them in a pattern that made sense to someone who had studied. I let my breath match the rhythm until it settled. Jace held out the stainless bottle. I took it and felt heat reach the bones of my palm. In the reflection, I could see the bandage line at my hairline faint now. I could see Lila's key in memory and the way it had flared when sunlight found it. I could see a black car cross a checkered flag and a boy set a helmet on a roof like it belonged to the roof. The gate agent called our row. Veronica walked through first with her chin level. Jace tipped the bottle back and drank, then capped it and placed it in my bag as if it belonged there. The jet bridge smelled like rubber and air you could not own. I stepped onto it and felt the floor hold. Behind us, the terminal noise rose and fell in waves. Somewhere in it, a voice said my name in a way that made other heads turn. I did not look back. The door closed on its hinges with a sound that could be mistaken for mercy if you were in the mood. Maui smelled like plumeria and sunscreen. The water folded cleanly over itself and forgot to be cold. I slept as if a string had been cut. On the flight home, the ocean turned back into a map, and the plane's hum held a pocket of quiet I could use. Fall slid into the city with a sharper light. The bay was a mirror with a scar in the middle where the wind ran. I started classes at Stanford the way a horse takes a fence it has measured for weeks. Numbers behaved. Models behaved until they did not. I found 4 people who did not mind the hours I kept. We claimed a corner room over a coffee shop in Soma and drew on the glass walls until the pens died. We called the project Lumen because the word fit in the mouth and pointed towards something lit from within. Veronica watched without hovering. She sent us a lawyer who did not waste words and a stack of paperwork that made us stand up straighter. One afternoon, she slid a key across the polished wood of the study desk, brass heavy old enough to have a story. It fit the Whitmore study lock with a click that traveled up the back of my neck. When the door swung open, the smell of leather and old paper made the room feel like a held breath that had finally been let out. She let me sit at the table. Not a guest chair, the table. "You will decide," she said. "Then you will live with it." We built through winter. Coffee spoiled into cardboard flavors at 3 a.m. The radiator clicked like an insect trapped in a jar. We argued about failure rates and laughed at graphs when they tried to bully us. Honey and ginger kept showing up in a stainless bottle that was not mine and ended up in my hand anyway. Jace had started at Cal for mechanical engineering and drifted to our glass-walled room most nights, even when no one had called him. He sketched drivetrain ideas in the margin of our finance models. He was quiet until something mattered. Then the words came simple and exact. Watching him talk was like watching a lock except a key. When the first trial worked, the noise we made was not loud. It felt like the inside of your chest when you crack a puzzle with no witness. We went to a diner and ate pancakes with cold butter in thin squares. Jace stole my last bite and did not pretend he had not. Spring brought investors with expensive haircuts. Whitmore Group put a small subsidiary under my hand to test whether my grip was worth trusting. I took it and let my shoulders adjust. In the first quarter, we did not break anything we could not fix. In the second, we stopped apologizing for being new and made a number that wanted to be looked at twice. Lumen began to look less like a pet project and more like a spine. Hale Capital's name started appearing in the wrong columns. Liquidity watch list became rumors with real teeth. Photos of Evan at restaurants lost a layer of gloss. In one, his jaw looked worked too hard for a meal he could not taste. Lila clung to his elbow in a way that had less confidence and more function. The key at her throat still flashed for cameras. The city's convention center smelled like carpet cleaner and ambition. Whitmore was on the judging panel for a clean energy bid. I sat between a woman who had built 2 hospitals in places that needed them, and a man who could make a dollar feel appreciated. Veronica had taken the far-right chair. The Hale team waited below with a slide deck and careful smiles. When Evan saw me at the dais, he pressed his lips together, then relaxed them like he wanted to seem practiced at this. He walked his pitch with a voice that had grown into itself. The slides did not stutter. When he glanced up, he skipped my eyes and let his attention land on Veronica as if mine cost too much. His numbers were honest where they had to be and arranged where they could be. We asked questions. He answered cleanly until the last one when a senior analyst asked about a gap no one had mentioned yet. His pause was the length of a breath held too long. He found a bridge and walked us across it without letting anyone look down. The judges adjourned. Rooms like this have lounges carved out behind doors that do not announce themselves. The women's lounge had a mirror that added light you could not source, and chairs that made the back remember it had a shape. I washed my hands and watched water seam off my skin. The door opened. Lila slipped in and caught the lock with her heel. "Can we talk?" she said. She held a small clutch like a weapon made for a doll. The key pendant tapped the clasp and left a tiny sound inside the noise of the air vent. "It is a public building," I said. "Talking is common." She laughed once. It came out like a cough, pretending to be a laugh. She took 2 steps closer and set her bag on the counter. Her hands shook. "You were reborn," she said. "Just say yes and save us both time." I dried my hands slow. The paper towel rasped. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me," she said. Her mouth trembled, then steadied. "At the canal behind the shelter, you remember that day. A boy in a blazer fell through the railing. You went into the water. You yelled for Sister to get help. When you ran, I stayed. His family came. I said your name before they asked for it. He gave me this." She touched the key. Her thumb found the groove as if it had learned a path over years. "He said he would come back for me." She stared at the mirror and at a girl who had built herself on a theft told often enough to become a version of truth. "You were living the life that was meant for me." So I tilted pieces until Evan saw me. I told him stories. I left out the parts that would have cost me. And when I said too much, his mother tried to pack me into a box with a ribbon. The only thing that saved me was running. Her eyes changed. They went hollow in the middle for a breath and then filled. In the other life, I ran down an alley and left a boy on the ground when men had iron in their hands. He saw me go. He never forgot. The breath came out in a tiny shudder. Jace knew. We stood in the sound of the vent in that beige light that flattens everything. I did not touch her. Touch would have been a lie. On the other side of the wall, the hall buzzed and modulated. Sound changed when doors opened and closed. A pair of steps stopped outside our lounge. The handle dipped a fraction and rose. Silence took its place like a person who has learned to hold breath. Lila lifted the chain over her head. The key hung from her fingers like a coin a magician is about to vanish. She closed her fist around it until her knuckles blanched. "He broke our engagement," she said. "He says it is about the company. He does not like to say anything is about a person. I was supposed to be a bridge. Now I am a leak. I will not be packed into any box." "You should go," I said. She shook her head and slid the chain back on. The key settled on her collarbone like a period at the end of a sentence that still wanted a clause. I left the lounge first. The hall had a look of people who are pretending they did not just do what they just did. Evan stood with his hands in his pockets, and his attention on a spot of carpet that did not need attention. He did not meet my eyes. He had heard enough to alter his own story. The bid went to a consortium that did not include Hale. Veronica shook hands until the photographers backed up to get everyone in. She had a smile that had weight and use. 2 weeks later, the news broke and took that use away. Lila had moved files. The journalist said misappropriated before someone else said stolen. The rival firm sent a statement in a tone that sounded like it wanted to be thanked for its honesty. Hale Capital's stock did not slide. It stepped into an elevator that only went one direction. I paused Lumen's alerts and sat at a window that looked over a strip of Bryant Street. A delivery truck blocked the lane while a cyclist considered a new route. Jace sent a text with no words. A photo of a stainless bottle on a sill with fog behind it. I answered with a photo of the brass key in my palm. He replied with the smallest thumbs up you could draw with pixels, and still have it be a thumbs up. The call came on a Sunday. Veronica's voice in a register I had not heard often. She said hospital in Hale and did not elaborate. We drove without speaking. The corridors had the same color as the last time, the same chemical order, the same way of making everything ordinary. Mrs. Hale had tears she was working hard to keep in the right place. Mr. Hale had anger he was trying to fit back into his suit. A police officer stood near the door with his body in a shape that said he would not need to move unless he had to. Evan lay on the bed with his shirt cut open and tape on his chest. The color had left his mouth. When he saw me, he looked like someone who had walked into a dark room and remembered too late where the furniture was. It was not for me, Mrs. Hale said. The words fought her throat. She went for me. He stepped in the way. I nodded because there was nothing else to do with a fact like that. They found Lila 2 floors down in a waiting area, still with the knife on her lap, as if it might turn back into a thing that cut fruit. They did not have to chase her. She did not run. The arresting officer moved with an economy that spoke of practice. The key lay against her skin, bright and unhelpful. Whitmore lawyers did not arrive. Veronica stood with me and watched a machine mark Evan's heart green light crawling in neat ticks across a black field. We do not kick a body while it is in the road, she said. Then she added like a person finishing a line from a test. We also do not pick it up and carry it where it will fall on us. Lumen filed paperwork with the exchange. The subsidiary that had been under Whitmore's wing shook out its feathers and took its own line. The first night we were officially ourselves, the team dragged a grill onto the roof and burned hamburgers, while the city opened under us like a circuit board lit one node at a time. Fireworks arced above the water, even though no holiday had asked for them. Someone was celebrating something else, and we borrowed it. Jace stood beside me with his hands in his pockets and his shoulder close enough to find. He watched the bursts and let them reflect in his eyes without blinking. Lumen will hold Whitmore one day. I said not as a boast, but as a possibility shaped like a joke. He tilted his head. Or Whitmore will hold Lumen, he said. I do not mind either way. The team shouted when a particularly clean bloom opened without smoke. Veronica came up the ladder in shoes that should not have liked ladders and handed me a folder. She did not hold it out like a gift. She set it on the ledge like a fact. Sign, she said. You will need a signature on the other line as well. She turned her wrist. The brass key to the study hung against her palm. She closed her hand, then put the key into mine. It warmed fast. Below us, the street carried people who did not look up. The checks from the checkered flag had rearranged into light and noise. The wind tasted like salt from a night that had decided to behave. I signed and set the pen down in the exact center of the folder so the line looked clean. Jace watched my hand, not the ink. When the fireworks smoke thinned, the city was still there unchanged. My fingers closed over the key until I felt its shape press back. The roof door stood open behind us. The hinge had a small cry that would not go away no matter what oil the building superintendent used. It sounded almost like a word someone had almost said, and then left where it fell. The wind had settled by the time we reached the final week of the fiscal quarter. The sky stretched wide and clean over the city, the cold bite of winter finally fading into a gray that hinted at rain, but would only hold it back for a while longer. I found myself sitting at the head of the table in the Whitmore conference room, facing rows of polished suits and sharp eyes that didn't hold anything for me but expectations. Lumen had grown faster than even I had anticipated, carving out its own space among the giants of Silicon Valley. In the corner of the room, the new logo blinked softly on the projector screen, sleek, clean, and still holding the memory of how far we had come in so little time. The financial report had been delivered earlier, all numbers and graphs laid out in precise order. The numbers held no surprises for me. Every quarter had been a test, each one measuring my resolve. The meetings, the contracts, the negotiations, they all felt like a steady pulse. But now, looking at the faces around the table, I felt the weight of the room for the first time. We're moving forward, but I said, tapping my pen against the tablet, we're not moving fast enough. The silence that followed wasn't because they didn't understand. It was the kind of silence that came from recognition. They knew what I was about to ask. They had seen the way Lumen's competitors had started to turn their heads, the way investors had started leaning in with expectation, and none of them had forgotten how quickly things could fall apart. We need more, I said simply. Across from me, one of the senior analysts cleared his throat. Are you suggesting I'm suggesting we push the limits, I interrupted. We leverage everything we have and then we go further. If we stop now, they'll catch up. And I won't let that happen. I could feel the heat of the moment gather around me, but it was Jace who spoke next. His voice came quiet but clear, his gaze locked on mine from the opposite side of the room. "I've been working on something," he said, "something that will give us the edge we need." There was a shift in the air, an undercurrent I hadn't expected. For all the talk of business plans, projections, and algorithms, Jace had never once tried to sit at the head of the table. He never had to. His presence was quiet, calculated, and steady. But when he spoke, there was no doubting the weight of his words. Everyone turned toward him now, as if expecting him to pull something from thin air. He reached for the tablet in front of him, swiped through the file, and handed it to the lead engineer. "It's a new form of energy storage. More efficient, longer-lasting, and scalable for industries that need a solution beyond what's currently available." The room hummed with immediate interest. I saw the engineers exchange glances, the wheels turning faster than I could follow. This was it, the game-changer we had been waiting for. We had always been close to the edge, but now, for the first time, it felt like we were standing on the right side of it. "We move on this," I said, nodding at the tablet. "Immediately. Get it into testing, get it into the hands of the investors who can see it for what it is. I don't care how fast we move, just make sure we're first." The engineers nodded, the conversation turning to technicalities, numbers, and schedules. It wasn't until later, when the room had cleared and the hum of the city outside filled the space, that Jace spoke again. "You've come a long way," he said, his voice softer now, almost reflective. "I remember when you couldn't even imagine yourself here." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stood and walked to the window, my gaze sweeping across the city. Lumen had made its mark, but there was always the next step, the next horizon. The path had been anything but easy, but it had been the only one worth following. Maybe I said my voice just loud enough for him to hear. But it's never enough, is it? Jace didn't respond at first. I felt him standing close behind me, his presence solid but not imposing. Then, in a rare moment of honesty, he said, "It's only enough if we stop." I turned to face him. He stood there, arms folded, with that same quiet confidence that had always been his way. The difference now was that it wasn't just confidence. It was trust in what we had built and where we were going. "Do you trust me?" I asked. He nodded. "I do." I walked back to the table and set the brass key down on the surface. The weight of it felt heavier now, more like an anchor than a symbol. It had been the key to the study, the key to this family, to everything we had built. But now it felt like a key to something else. "Then let's finish what we started." Later that night, the skyline of the city was lined with lights that stretched from one side of the bay to the other. The office was quiet now, and only the soft glow of the computer screens and the faint hum of the air conditioning broke the silence. I glanced at the brass key on my desk one last time before closing the lid of my laptop. I had learned in this strange and new life that it was never the key that mattered. It was the doors you chose to open, the ones you walked through, and the ones you locked behind you. Jace came in later, holding the stainless bottle that had become a kind of ritual between us. He set it down gently beside me, his gaze lingering on the key before moving to my face. "I'll always have your back," he said, "no matter what." And for a moment I felt something I hadn't expected, the weight of the past slipping away. In that moment, the future didn't seem like a path to run from. It felt like a door I was finally ready to open. I picked up the key and turned it in my hand, feeling its edges, its weight, its history. Then, with one final glance at Jace, I locked it away in the drawer of my desk. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.